What's up, everyone? This is Adrian with Fomander X Prop Streaming. I'm here again with another review, this time of one of my all-time favorite TV shows, the ending of it at least. So, I'm here to discuss Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 6. The episode's called The Iron Throne, and it's the season finale of Season 8, as well as the series finale for all of Game of Thrones. And for a show that's been with us since 2011, personally, I've been a fan since 2014. There's a lot to say about the last season. To be honest, it wasn't their best. I had a lot of problems till the very end, but then that's not what we're here to discuss. Really, let's just focus on the ending itself. So, whenever you're ready, here we go. Suffice to say, spoilers ahead if you haven't seen it. So, now's the time. Go see it. Go watch the whole season if you haven't. And here we go. So, the episode starts with Arya looking at the destruction and carnage happening throughout King's Landing. So, in episode 5, which was the Battle of King's Landing, we basically just saw Daenerys snap and she burned through all of King's Landing, all of the men, women, children, everyone who didn't fight. They all got burned all the same. So she finally did become a dragon, and this is the effect of all of it. Tyrion walks among the wreckage and he needs a moment alone. Jon wants to send some Northmen with him. He says there's something he has to do by himself. So he decides to go visit the spot where Cersei and Jaime were crushed. And Jaime's plot, basically, he went from the baddest, most hated character to one of the most beloved characters. But in the end, he went back again to Cersei because the things we do for love, right? And that's basically his whole story. And Tyrion's just there. He mourns for both of them. Mostly Jaime, the only person who ever treated him nicely in his life, is now gone. Jon and Davos, they keep walking around King's Landing, or what's left of it. And they try and fail to stop Grey Worm from executing some Lannister prisoners. And Grey Worm, personally, is one of my favorite characters. I found him very sympathetic. I really liked him for a while. And then you see him here, he makes a heel turn. And he just completely devotes himself to the cause of killing all of Daenerys' enemies to death. Mostly because Missandei died. And I love her too, but then, he shouldn't have killed all of them. That's not the right thing to do. And a lot of this episode basically is talking about what's the right thing to do in a place as complicated as Westeros. So we'll go through that as the breakdown moves along. Jon, he sees this and realizing it's on her orders that all of Dany's enemies are to be executed, she goes to confront her at the stairs of, I think, the Red Keep, where the Walk of Atonement starts. I'm not entirely sure. Probably not, but would be nice if that's where it is. And he goes to confront her, but all of the Unsullied are there, along with the Dothraki. And it's a great contrast if you watch the scene with all of them just there. So you can see the Unsullied, they're unmoving, they're steady, they're well-trained infantry. And then you see the Dothraki, they're chaotic, they're horse riders, they're cavalry by nature. And once upon a time, back in Essos, they were worst enemies. The greatest victory of the Unsullied was when they beat 20,000 Dothraki, and all of the Dothraki that remained chopped their braids off to show that they were defeated. And now you see them here, hundreds of years later, all united under Queen Daenerys. And the best shot of the season was when Dany finally becomes a dragon. And the wings of Drogon come out behind her. And she has become a dragon. And the thing about Dany's character is she snapped in less than 2 episodes. So just to kind of get into the mindset of where she is right now, in her mind, she's the only one who's justified and right at this point. She wants to rid the world of evil, cruelty, slavery, and tyranny. She wants to be different from every other Targaryen who was a monarch, who was a tyrant as well. She wants to be different from all of them. She wants to break the wheel, as you will. And it's a very noble thing. That's why she was one of the main good guy characters for a long while. But she has now, at this point, become the very thing she sought to destroy. Because power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And when the gods flipped the coin as to what kind of Targaryen she would be, the coin kind of stayed in the air for a while. But seeing as Jon arrived and he's a Targaryen, apparently, we can see which side she fell on. So she gives a speech in High Valyrian, which I'm not sure if the Dothraki understood. They speak their own language. But here we have to remember, the reason she doesn't give her speech in the common tongue is because that's her native tongue. That's her first language, really, High Valyrian. So we have to remember Daenerys' arc throughout the whole series. She was an exiled noble from a house that was overthrown in a revolution. And then she comes to possess three, basically the ultimate multi-role attack bomber and nuclear weapons delivery aircraft in the form of three dragons. And she becomes their mother. They're absolutely loyal to her because she raised them. And in addition to that, she acquires a foreign army loyal only to her. They're not mercenaries. They follow her out of the force of her personality and charisma. And that's a dangerous army. They'd follow her to the ends of the earth. So at this point, she's telling them, we will take our fight to the ends of the earth. And they're all cheering. Even the Unsullied are cheering in their own way with their 3 taps of the spear on the ground. So, one of the most distinct lines she was saying, which you can understand even if you don't speak Valyrian, was, we will not stop until the world is liberated, basically, from Winterfell to Dorne. So, all of the 7 kingdoms, she said. So she will spread her message of peace and freedom by force, basically, at this point. So we can see that she's cracked. She's cracked completely. She was unwilling to compromise, and at this point, it's either her way or you end up dead, just like King's Landing. And at this point, she declares Grey Worm her master of war and the supreme commander of her forces. At this point, around 6,000 men left, probably. And all of them cheer. But Tyrion, after having seen Cersei and Jaime dead, he decides he's had enough. And he publicly resigns as Hand of the Queen by throwing away the hand symbol, the hand pin. And he calls her out for massacring the whole city. He says, yes, I'm a traitor. But what does that make you? Genocidal, really. So he's arrested. And at this point, Dany fully descends into the Mad Queen. We probably figured that she would have descended anyway, but based on the way the season went, it went by really, really fast. They switched from having the Night King as the main villain, then they moved to Cersei as the main villain, and then they moved to Dany as the main villain. So, pacing-wise, the season didn't really manage there. The episode then shifts to Jon, and then he talks to Arya. And Arya says, I know a killer when I see one. Then of course, everyone saw the dragons just murder, saw Drogon just murder everyone because Daenerys made him. And then Jon talks to Tyrion, who at this point feels in his gut he's about to be executed for treason. Because that's what happened to Varys. And you know, Varys is about to be proven right really, really soon. But Tyrion convinces Jon to kill her. Basically saying that everywhere she goes, evil men die. But what happens when she decides what kind of men are evil, and she alone has that power to decide? Well, that's basically the argument that happened in Injustice, when Superman became supreme leader of the world and decided all of the criminals on Earth should be executed immediately. And we saw that descent into madness by people who have always seen power and strength. And this is what's happening to Daenerys. In her quest for power and strength, she gathers her power and strength, and then she wants all of it. In her mind, she's justified, but then we can see at what cost. So Jon, he leaves conflicted, and based on his lines in all of season 8, basically, we see that there are 3 main themes about why he's hesitant to kill her. So there's honor, there's love, and there's duty. His honor is that he bent the knee to her, and she is my queen, as he'd say every damn episode. And that's his honor. He swore an oath to be loyal to her. to be at her side, to be with her, whether she's right or she's wrong. So he's being real Ned Starky here and being a stickler for his oath. As for his love for her, she's his aunt, and he's a Northman by nature. He can't just marry his aunt, but he loves her enough to say that I don't want to be Aegon the Sixth Targaryen. I don't want to be king of the Seven Kingdoms. She wants it, she can have it. I don't want it. She's my queen, and I love her. And Tyrion says, I love her too. Basically, which means that he loved her as a queen, but then that didn't turn into romantic feelings. It didn't cloud his judgment. I mean, more than it has. And then we think of duty. And if there's one thing that Jon has been, it's duty bound. His entire arc throughout the show, it's been about his duty. His duty to the Night's Watch, his duty to his family, his duty to protect the living from the dead, and his duty as King of the North. And later his duty once again to protect the living from the dead. So at this point, it's his duty because he's the only one who can get near enough to kill her. So he thinks about it. Off screen, basically. He marches up to the throne room guarded by Drogon, who comes out, but Drogon lets him through. And the Unsullied, they don't take away his weapons at this point. We don't know why. Dany nears the throne, meanwhile. It's a payoff to the Season 2 vision she had in the House of the Undying, where the throne room is just completely destroyed. There's snow everywhere, which now we know is ash. It's ash everywhere. And she reaches for the Iron Throne but never touches it. Except now she does. Because this is the first time she's seen the Iron Throne in her life. Viserys spent her entire childhood telling her, one day it will be mine, it will be ours. We will reclaim it. And now she's finally seeing it. So this is a girl who's finally getting the fruit of her labor. She's always wanted the throne and now she has it. But ironically, she'll never sit on it. Even if this time around, she does touch one of the pommels of one of the swords. She turns around to see Jon and she tells Jon about a story Viserys used to tell her about how the Iron Throne was made from 1,000 swords of Aegon the First's enemies, making it hard to climb where you'd only see his feet. And this is a reference to the book Iron Throne, which is, as we remember, about 100 feet tall. You literally have to climb it every day. So it's not a comfy seat, and it's not even a seat, it's a skyscraper really. And she tells him it has always been their destiny to rule the world as just and righteous leaders, to rule together. And at this point, she doesn't remember that the Starks don't like her. At this point, it's just her success, and Jon. And she believes all three of those go together. And she genuinely believes at this point, so we can see her kind of snapping here, that she is right, she is good. So Jon asks, what about everyone else who thinks they know what's good and what's right? And then she says they don't have a choice. So here Jon realizes neither does he. He has to kill her because she's gone full Mad Queen. And if he doesn't kill her, she's a threat to every single free being in Planetos, which is the name of the Game of Thrones planet. So Jon swears fealty once more. He says, you are my queen now and always. He kisses her, and then he does the deed. So he stabs her, somewhat fulfilling the Azor Ahai prophecy. So for those who don't remember, it was believed that either Dany or Jon would be the person who would lead the armies of the living against the armies of the dead. As we can see, Jon kind of led it, and then Daenerys kind of led the fight. And then Arya was the one who killed the Night King for some reason. Personally, I didn't like that. But we can see that Azor Ahai, so let's say Jon is Azor Ahai, he kills his lover Nissa Nissa, and this creates Lightbringer. But rather than use his sword, his classic sword over there, he uses his knife for the first time, which normally he just throws away during battles. And rather than save the world from White Walkers, he's saving the world from Daenerys and her potential tyranny at this point. And Drogon comes in, he sees Dany dead. He tries to wake her up in a very dramatic, very emotional scene. She doesn't wake up. She's dead. Jon stuck her with the pointy end. So Drogon has a standoff with Jon, and there are two ways to see what happens next. The academic way of seeing it is that Drogon is super intelligent. He rejects the system that drove her to insanity. Her desire to sit on the throne was what killed her, her desire for power. So then he decides to burn the throne. And he decides to break the wheel for her. So in the end, her last wish, to break the wheel, to create a better world, free from the tyrants of the old one. He helps bring that into fruition. But the other meme theory about that is that he sees the pointy knife in her, and then he sees the chair made of pointy ends. Then he decides that the pointy-ended chair killed her. So we don't know for sure. We never realize how smart the dragons are in Game of Thrones. So Drogon melts the Iron Throne, and then he takes Dany away, never to be seen again at this point. So if you think about it, the real person who lost the Game of Thrones among the fan favorites was Daenerys, because in the end, everyone was cheering for her, everyone was rooting for her, everyone was on her side. And they forgave her because everywhere she went, evil men died, and only evil men. Until one day, it wasn't just evil men, but the women and the children too. So, she lost. But if you think about it, it was because of her that the wheel was broken. All of the tyrants in Game of Thrones at this point are dead, and now those who are left alive, they have to go about the process of rebuilding the new world that Dany helped by destroying the old one. So I think that was her role here, really, the destruction of the old world, but represented by the massacre of King's Landing. So 2 weeks later, we see that Jon and Tyrion are prisoners of the Unsullied. So they're an army without a queen. All they have are her killers. And Tyrion is presented to the High Lords of Westeros, basically the leaders of the great houses. And they were all summoned to the capital, to the Dragon Pit specifically, in the midst of the power vacuum caused by the War of the Two Queens. So Cersei versus Daenerys, all of them actually swore to Daenerys, but now she's dead. So here we all are. The North at this point is run by Sansa Stark, who is the only known competent leader at this point. And it's a scary thought, she's the only competent leader in the group, really. The Riverlands now belong to her uncle Edmure Tully, who is not a competent leader at all. The Reach has no leadership at the moment. Also, the population is probably depleted. The Stormlands is under Lord Gendry Baratheon, who we don't see reference anything with his marriage proposal to Arya at all. There wasn't any time in this episode. The Rocklands of the Lannisters, right now, the only Lannister left is Tyrion, so they don't have representation. The Iron Islands is under Yara Greyjoy, and Dorne has an unnamed Martell Prince now, although he might be Oberyn and Doran's younger brother, probably. The Vale is under Sweet Robin Arryn, first time we've seen him in 3 years, and Lord Royce, who's been holding it in his stead. So the Westerosi monarch will decide Jon and Tyrion's fate since they committed the crime in the King's City. But this way, it's to prevent a war against Daenerys' forces who want Jon's head. Yara was more than willing to give it, but Arya was like, I'll slit your throat. So Tyrion, in his infinite wisdom, he says, you're the great houses of Westeros, you pick one. And at this point, we slowly see the wheel being broken, just like Daenerys wanted, but basically other characters are picking up for her because she went crazy. Edmure steps up and Sansa puts him in his place. She's just like, Uncle, please sit. You're embarrassing yourself. And Sam, meanwhile, recommends democracy. He didn't invent it, the Night's Watch did, so it's a reference to his time in the Night's Watch where everyone gets a vote. All the lords laugh, because why would you let the people vote for you? Really, it's a stupid idea, to them at least. So the theory where Game of Thrones would end as a democracy, that goes down the drain. So Tyrion puts his recommendation. Me personally, I find this out of left field. I didn't really expect it or like it. I feel it's uncalled for. The cast, the crew, the audience, the characters themselves, they're all taken aback. They're all, what in the seven hells is this? So he recommends Bran the Broken Stark. So as Bran the Builder, during the Age of Heroes, became King of the North. He built the wall, founded the Night's Watch, all of the good stuff. This Bran the Broken, he'd lead the new age of heroes. So, in some ways, if you think about it, they really tried to reference ancient history, they really tried to reference previous seasons. So they really tried to fix the ending of Game of Thrones with this episode. But with the way season 8 went, really. Yeah, really. So, the reason he pitches for Bran is because Bran is the three-eyed raven at this point. He's the collective past of Westeros. And since he knows everything that happened in the past, he can be the leader who will learn from all of the previous mistakes that everyone's made. He will be the one to lead the rebuilding of the new world and applying memories of the old one. So, memories and stories, those are what Bran has to offer because he is the keeper of everyone's memory. And no one would kill him if he was protector of the realm because he is the living memory of this world. And if you think about it, that's a logical choice. But if you think about it from a storytelling perspective, there was no setup for that. He didn't do anything. So I'm still kind of mad. Personally though, I don't know who I'd put. So props to Bran, really. Tyrion says I, Sam says I, Edmure, Sweet Robin, the Last Martell. Yara, who wanted independence for the Iron Islands, somehow also says I to staying in the Union. Davos gets a say, Brienne gets a say. And Sansa's the last person to speak. And despite Bran being the last true-born male heir of Ned Stark, and therefore proper king in the North, and therefore the number one Northman at this point, she decides that the North has had enough of the South. It's had enough of the Great War, the War of the Five Kings, the War of the Two Queens. It's had enough. So she speaks on behalf of the North and says the North will remain a free and independent kingdom as it has in the past for thousands of years, which Bran accepts. Meaning that to some degree, even if they're independent, they'll still have good relations with the 6 kingdoms now. So the 7 kingdoms of Westeros are now down to 6. Although in reality, they're like 8. So, all declare for King Bran the Broken. And I'm also mad because he went from I can't be lord of anything to yes, I can do it, I'm the king. So he's flexing on Grey Worm, saying that because he made Tyrion his hand. So both of them at this point are reluctant rulers. So after this, Jon is visited by Tyrion and he has a conditional release because Grey Worm wanted his head. But the Unsullied decide to release him on the condition that he takes the Black again. And you realize that he hasn't been in the Night's Watch since he got murdered. So they're making him return to the place where he was murdered. So I can't tell what that does for him, but really it keeps him alive. So we got our Return of the King ending, as people like to call it, because it looks like the ending of Lord of the Rings. Basically, so Jon goes out in his Northman armor one last time. He makes eye contact with the Grey Worm, and the Unsullied and the Dothraki are now free to leave Westeros. They didn't need payment. They didn't want the reach when Davos offered. They wanted justice for their queen. And as far as they're concerned, this is the only justice they're gonna get. So as Tyrion said, no one's really happy about it, so it's a good compromise. Which you could say about Season 8. It's a good compromise. So, Torco Nudo, his last command to the Unsullied is set sail for the Isle of Nath. And that was his last promise to Missandei, I miss her so much, that he was going to protect her people who are prone to being enslaved. Meanwhile, Jon heads down to the pier to say goodbye to his siblings one last time. And if you think about it, the moment the Unsullied leave, they're not gonna keep tabs on Jon anymore. He's free to stay if he wants. But based on what we know about Jon, I'm pretty sure he doesn't want it. He doesn't want any of the trouble or complication. So here he says goodbye to his siblings one last time. Sansa is Ned Stark's daughter. She speaks for the North. And the little bird that she once was is now dead completely. Only a queen remains. So she has learned from every single vicious tyrant who's ever decided to keep her around. And she's learned from Cersei, she's learned from having a crush on Joffrey and him being a dick. She's learned from Littlefinger, she's learned from Ramsay, she's learned from all of them. And now only she remains. Arya is a girl who is no one, but now she is someone. She's Arya Stark of Winterfell. She always will be. But she was never meant to be in a castle. So she's a free spirit, which is why she's going west of Westeros where the maps don't reach. And she gets a long goodbye from Jon since she's Jon's favorite sibling. Bran, meanwhile, this scene is more symbolic than anything because Bran, he doesn't really have a relationship with Jon, especially since every time he's talked to Jon this season, it's always been functional. So it's a reference, this scene, to the Field of Fire, where King Torrent Stark long ago bent the knee to Aegon the Conqueror to save his people. So there are no Stark swords in the Iron Throne because he bent the knee and became Lord Torrent Stark, Warden of the North. Meanwhile, King Aegon the Sixth Targaryen, which is Jon's real name, he bends the knee to King Bran the Broken Stark to save his people. Why? Because he realizes they'd be in better hands if they were under the king who can see past, present, future. The omniscient one compared to Jon. So Jon, content basically that the kingdom is in good hands and his siblings are in good hands, which is their own. He sails for Eastwatch by the sea and then Castle Black. So we'll get back to them later. At this point, Brienne is the new Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, thanks to Jaime. And if you look closely at her sigil on her chest, it's a raven with its mouth open. Fitting, because Bran's the three-eyed raven. And she writes about the exploits of Sir Jaime Lannister, who is now the Oathkeeper in the Great White Book, which can only be updated by the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. And seeing as he made her a knight, she's Lord Commander mostly, a lot because of him. So she writes the good about him. And in the end, he died loyal. Died loyal to Cersei, yes, but he died loyal to a queen, his queen. So meanwhile, we then move to the rest of King's Landing, which is the Tower of the Hand. Although we did see the Tower of the Hand destroyed, so I don't know what room this is and where it is. But we know that the small council has meetings here. So Tyrion's first act as hand is to fix the chairs for the small council, which is representing that he's getting things in order, finally. Bronn of the Blackwater, he shows up. He's Lord Paramount of the Reach, Lord of Highgarden. So he has the fanciest castle in all of Westeros now, because the Tyrells are all dead. He's also Master of Coin, because who better to give it to than someone whose one concern is money. Davos becomes Master of Ships, as per his expertise. Sam becomes Archmaester, and he presents Tyrion with a Song of Ice and Fire. So we always theorized that the ending would be him writing a book, just like Lord of the Rings. Turns out he just wrote the title and another unknown maester wrote the book. Tyrion is erased from the histories, which he finds rude. I also find that rude because a lot of his story drives the political aspect of the show forward. So that's rude. Bran arrives making his presence felt, and he basically just says, there is no Master of Whispers and Master of War yet. So please find one. You can carry on with your duties. Although, with a peaceful world supposed to be, and with him being able to see past, present, future of everything, officially those two positions should be obsolete. But he's basically saying there will always be conflict, kind of. So he then says, I can find Drogon, and then he lets them carry on. And Brienne is the first Kingsguard commander to sit on the small council since Sir Gerald Hightower, basically, during the time of the Mad King. Because Barristan Selmy did not sit on the small council because he fought opposite of Robert's side during the war. And Bran, he looks all happy here. He looks content seeing his subjects. He looks like Professor X really in the wheelchair, all smug. Happy with his new position. And yeah, his small council gets to work fixing the new world, although they can't decide which is more important. The drainage, the plumbing of the country, the ships, or the brothels. So that's a good comedy. But the true ending of the show, it ends with arguably the main characters of the show, which are the Starks. Always have been the Starks. So I'm the most loyal Stark fan, one of the most loyal at least. And I'm happy, if anything, that they won the Game of Thrones. So Arya waves the Stark sigil on her ship. Also, the front end of her ship is a wolf. So she's not no one anymore. She is who she is. Arya the Explorer. And she is now Queen of the New World. Because who knows what she'll discover. Meanwhile, Sansa gets rid of the picnic table where Jon used to rule from. She consolidated power in the north. And the last words heard on Game of Thrones, in the very last scene, is Queen in the North. So, she is a product of all her experiences. She's no longer the annoying girl that she once was. That girl is dead now. So, she has the Stark wolves for her crown. She has the corset that makes it impossible for you to tear off her dress. She has tully fish scales on her sleeves. She has weirwood leaves on the trail of her dress in honor of the old gods. So, before she used to worship the old gods and the new and then none of them. But now, she has become the North. She is one with the North and the North is with her completely. As you can see, everyone draws out their swords and declares for her that she is the king and the queen in the North. And they will never bow to outsiders ever again. Not even Bran, really. So Jon, who is arguably the main character of the whole show, he's brooding. He just killed his queen and his lover. Basically, all of Westeros rejected him. He's now back to being a bastard. But life's simple. So he reunites with Tormund. He reunites with the Wildlings, what's left of the Night's Watch, and Ghost. And he finally pets Ghost. So thanks Twitter, finally pets Ghost. There are no more White Walkers. So at this point, all of the Wildlings, they owe a debt to him that can never be repaid. He opened the wall for them to cross through, for them to live. And now they live because of him. So he leads the Exodus home. So in the words of George Lucas, the whole thing is like poetry, it rhymes. So the series starts with the Army of the Dead marching south led by the Night King. Although I'm not sure if we saw him, but I'm sure the Army of the Dead was there. This time, it ends with the Army of New Life, trudging back up north, with Jon at the center of it all, as arguably king of the free folk. They'll only follow one of their own, and he has proven time and again that he is one of their own. He has their best interest in mind. He was the shield that guarded the realms of men, and now his watch has ended. So, I'd say that's fitting. I'd say it's a poetic end to Game of Thrones, that it ends with Jon. And although he didn't kill the Night King, which was mad, he did save the Wildlings from extinction. He saved the Northmen from extinction. He united with Daenerys. He saved the free world from extinction. He saved everyone from the ice zombies, and then he saved everyone from Daenerys. So, if the show was all about him, I'd say in the end, even if he doesn't have any lands or titles or will bear any kids, he's free. And he's free to live a simple life with the people who love him the most, really. And I'd say that's fitting. So, that's my breakdown of Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 6, The Iron Throne, or the episode where the Iron Throne melts. And overall, I'd give the episode like 7 over 10. In terms of ending the show, it's not the best ending we could hope for. In terms of ending the season, yeah, it's the best ending we could hope for. The season itself was low on my rating. But yeah, as a loyal fan of Game of Thrones, this show's been with us for a long, long time. And now our watch has ended. So we have to think of something else to do with our lives. But till then, let's just enjoy the memories that this show has given us. All of these lovable characters, these moments, they're human. As human gets. Even the ice zombies, even the dragons. So that's what they introduced to us on TV. Humanity in fantasy. And I really appreciate Game of Thrones for that. And in the end, I'll miss it. So until my next review, guys, like and subscribe, please. Like my page on Facebook. And I'll see you next time. Valar Morghulis.